What is up, Bitcoiners? It's CK here with Ansel for another episode of Fed Watch. We have a really juicy episode for you guys here. Last week was absolutely crazy in the world of macro, in the world of traditional finance, and in the world of people waking up to Bitcoin. We have a lot to talk about here. Ansel, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I had a problem with the mute button there. Yeah, what a crazy week, man. This will be enlightening because I haven't had a chance to pick your brain about it yet. So let's get into it.
Well, I've been talking about it a lot. Bitcoin Magazine Happy Hour last week, the POV crypto episode that just dropped today. Wall Street Bets has been the topic of conversation, even on Bitcoin Magazine. I think we put out like 3 or 4 pieces kind of commenting on the correlation between Wall Street Bets, Bitcoin, and people waking up to what's wrong with the system. Before we get into all of that, though, let's give a quick shout out to our sponsor. It is Blockstack, Stacks 2.0. This is a blockchain that is not trying to launch their own money, that is trying to leverage Bitcoin. They understand at Stacks that Bitcoin is going to be the de facto money of the future, and that the Bitcoin blockchain security is something that you can build applications on top of. The Stacks 2.0 is a proof of transfer consensus mechanism, POX, where you can transfer your Bitcoin onto the Stacks 2.0 blockchain, and you can stake STX tokens on the blockchain in order to secure it, but get paid out in BTC. All of the economy inside the on the Stacks 2 blockchain is all centered around Bitcoin, and it's all centered around finding new and creative ways to scale Bitcoin, build decentralized apps, and do things that other altcoins are trying to do, but leverage Bitcoin instead. Really excited to see this direction from the decentralized finance movement and from the blockchain ecosystem. And all of that on the verge of Ernst & Young announcing that they are actually completely closing out their blockchain division. So the meme of blockchain, not Bitcoin, is dying. And I think that the real actions that the Stacks 2 team has made in order to align their blockchain with Bitcoin is kind of proof in the pudding there. So check out stacks2.com. That's STACKTS 2.com to learn more about all the applications that already exist and the capabilities for future development. All right, let's get into this episode. So Ansel, I mean, I know that you have some really strong feelings. This really got the juices flowing for you. What's your initial reaction to, what went down last week?
Well, I wanted to be upset about it. I wanted to be like, yeah, this is the little guy getting back at the financial system. The banksters have driven us to the end of our ropes, and this is the insurrection against bankers. But the more I looked into it and the more I thought about it, I kind of went the other way on my feelings. So those were my initial thoughts.
So let's talk about that thought process. Like, why isn't this the little guy stepping up against the suits? Why is there more to this story?
Well, because what was their goal? What was their how did they think that this was going to end? Right? If they crashed the entire financial system, like I kind of thought this turned into something akin to a Lehman moment, where the clearinghouses were going to go bankrupt, and if that happened, um, this there would need to be massive bailouts, and they would probably lose a lot of money on their trades or whatever. Like this wasn't going to end up with the Wall Street bet community, the small retail investor coming out on top. Any way you played it out, you're by playing their game. Yes, this was an evolution of tactics. It was a new vector to attack the system, and it's a credible threat now in the future. But I don't think that it is could ever have led to the little guy winning. And so that's kind of what I've come to think about this. What do you think?
No, I mean, I think that that's a great insight there. And this is where, Bitcoiners got excited because of the kind of energy around this, the screw the suits type of mentality. But ultimately, I think most Bitcoiners saw that, hey, you're playing by their game. Like, this is not a real way to, take down the system in a productive way. And this is why Bitcoin is better. This is what Bitcoin is, a completely alternative system, a system that is being built simultaneously adjacent to the traditional system. And it is a much better tool to, I guess, crash the current system. I also think that, like you said, the Wall Street Bets intention wasn't to take down the system. It wasn't to destroy these clearing houses and to take down the dollar. It was a lot more like, hey, there's an opportunity to moon this stock. These suits have gravely misunderstood what they're doing, and this is an opportunity to make money. Again, I have a friend who did make a lot of money in this trade, and he's not a Bitcoiner. Like, he does not have the, he's more like screw the suits, but not screw the system. That's kind of his mentality. So it's very different.
Well, Bitcoin has an end game, right? The Morpheus and Neo meme, where Neo's like, oh, so it's going to be worth $1 million someday. Or I can sell this for $1 million someday. And Morpheus says, no, one day you won't have to. So there's an end game. Bitcoin is money. Bitcoin will be used as money in the future. But for GameStop stock, like, what's the end game? You're going to have to sell it at some point. And you want the exchanges to be solvent when you do that. So it's to me, it's kind of like there wasn't there was no forethought in it. They just, like you said, they wanted to, I guess, stick it to the hedge funds and try to moon a stock. And there was no like thought process. But like I said, this is now a viable option or viable threat in the future that we, as the little guy, can use against the system. And they're going to have to acknowledge the power that people have. It's a new power that people now have woken up to. This, along with Bitcoin, obviously, is waking up a lot of people and making them take note for sure.
Well, I mean, Bitcoiners are kind of like this cyber hornet. Really, if you could make an argument, it's like all of these like little meme traders, scouring the internet looking for market opportunities. They're kind of like the white blood cells of the traditional system, right? There's all these hedge funds kind of doing their thing, acting bad, taking advantage, and now they need to really tread lightly. Like, they can't do something that is going to expose themselves to limitless risk. And we already seen some hedge funds saying that they're going to stop shorting. So just because of that unlimited risk that comes with shorting. I do see, I see this GameStop thing as being the market correcting bad trades made by traditional finance. And that's why when I see the regulators and other folks like that, kind of saying like, oh, this is manipulation, these meme traders are the bad guys, all this kind of stuff, like the narrative that's being spun from the top down. I don't think it's correct. And we've seen calls for more regulation. And it's like, your regulation didn't stop these hedge funds from taking unlimited risk. The market stopped them. The market is the one who made them pay. We've talked about this many times before, but regulation doesn't necessarily solve problems. If anything, it creates more problems.
Yeah, in the great financial crisis, right? They didn't include more than like a 1% default rate in their mortgages because they said, oh, that could never happen, right? And then, of course, they had like a 5% default rate and shit hit the fan. Same thing, like, no one would ever try to pump GameStop to $100. Don't they understand that the fair market value is $5 for this stock? So it just didn't go into their calculations. And it's a complete game changer in that way. People are going to have to evaluate their risk all through the market. And that could have far reaching consequences on many different markets, many different asset classes, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there were a few kind of like opinion articles talking about, is GameStop taking Bitcoin's thunder? Are these shit coins, really going to like overwhelm Bitcoin? And to Bitcoiners, it was laughable, but I definitely think that some people who don't understand Bitcoin could buy these things. But now seeing today is February 2nd, GameStop stock is under $100. It has completely deflated. We've seen Dogecoin pump and then completely deflate. these things are shit coins. And if you look at Bitcoin compared to other assets, Bitcoin is literally in the top, I think it's in the top 15 of largest assets by market cap in terms of stocks, right? So if you were to compare Bitcoin to stocks, like Bitcoin's a large cap. Even compared to Apple, even compared to Netflix, even compared to the SPY S&P 500 index, Bitcoin has an enormous amount of market cap to it, and I think Bitcoin is real, and a lot of people don't quite understand the difference between Bitcoin and some small cap stock that you can pump, just because Bitcoin does also have that reflexivity and massive volatility factor. It is a massive asset regardless of that.
Yeah, and when you saw this kind of mania leak over into crypto, it went into Dogecoin, like one of the smallest, easiest pumpable coins. It didn't go into Bitcoin with a $5 or $600 billion market cap. Now it's much harder to move. And we saw when they tried to do it in silver too. I don't know if we're going to get into that, but with the silver, they tried to pump it, and it went up $2 from 27 to 29. And then there is a large premium on the physical right now, but they couldn't really move silver, and I don't think they would be able to really move Bitcoin either. Bitcoin it's grown up in the wild. What was that Andreas thing about how Bitcoin is exposed to the internet, and that is what makes it robust, right? The defenses of Bitcoin are very robust because it's exposed out there. It's decentralized. There's no regulator to take care of it and protect it. So it had to grow really thick roots where, so I think if these guys come and try to pump Bitcoin unduly, then it will blow up in their faces really quick. I don't think they can do what they did to GameStop to Bitcoin is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think that GameStop absolutely kind of showed a path to success for how the little guy can stack Bitcoin and eventually take so much off the market that, whatever hedge funds, whatever big player out there who's short or is not holding their own keys or whatever can hit some sort of massive liquidity crisis. Like, I think that there was a lot of the Bitcoin, 3 to 5 year game plan that kind of got a little preview from watching GME. But with that being said, it needs to be a much more significant effort. And, me, you, all the Bitcoiners listening to this podcast, we are the stackers of last resort. We're the ones who are taking supply off the market and we are putting it into cold storage, and we don't plan on selling until, you don't have to sell it, just like that Morpheus meme.
Well, I think that Bitcoin would be much harder to do this to than some other stock or some small altcoin. So I think that they would rather go against something that they know that they're going to be able to do this against versus Bitcoin. I just don't see, I think actually, one of the worries early on with CME futures was this exact thing that happened to GameStop. So Pederfy, he's like the founder of Interactive Brokers, and he said that Bitcoin is so volatile that when it goes up, it could bankrupt the clearinghouse. So that was his exact worry. And this is played out now with GameStop. But at this point, Bitcoin's kind of infrastructure is set up very robustly. And I don't think that it would fall prey to the same sort of thing. There's a lot of easier stuff out there to go after than Bitcoin. So I think that they would do that instead.
So, I mean, what do you think that this means for, this kind of market activity and how Bitcoin plays into it? Because I think a lot of Bitcoiners were extremely excited. But a lot of Bitcoiners are like, this is the same that can happen with Bitcoin. We need to use Bitcoin to do the same thing. It'll work better. Where, like, how do you kind of see, this change in market mentality fitting into the Bitcoin revolution?
Well, I see that the two major stories from this year have been the Capitol, right? The Capitol riots, and now this GameStop thing, at least in my world. And so, but what are those two things? What do they display for us? Well, the Capitol riots were 50 pretty much unarmed people were able to terrify the living daylights out of the highest, legislature in the land, right? The Congress. To me, it exposed the Congress as very weak people. Like, they're supposed to be protecting us, but 50 unarmed people, they thought they were going to get all massacred and stuff. Like, they were just totally frightened. So I think it exposed a weakness in government's ability to protect themselves, let alone protect us. And so I think that's kind of a subconscious wake-up call for people. Now, in this, the Wall Street Bets thing, it's kind of like exposing the weakness of the financial system. So where the capital rights expose the weakness of the government, now the financial system weakness is exposed to just a bunch of guys on Reddit. So I don't know. I think that these two stories this year kind of show the weakness in the system, the existing system that we have now. And that totally plays into where Bitcoin comes in, because Bitcoin is supposed to be building the infrastructure, the parallel system, the alternative for people to go to. So yeah, I think Bitcoin holding strong at $30,000. We have Taproot coming out. There's a lot of stuff happening right now on Bitcoin. It's just very robust in the face of this weakness on the other side. So I think it does put Bitcoin in a very good light.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that the way that you teased out these kind of two events as showing the fragility in both like our leadership in the United States in particular, and then even the mentality of folks. Like last night, AOC was on Instagram, on like Instagram Live, talking about her experience. And okay, yeah, it was traumatic, but at the same time, she's not the type of person that is going to ride on the horse leading an army. Like, that's pretty freaking obvious that, the moment was very, very frightening to her, and she was extremely scared. Like, that's not the type of leader that she is.
Well, yeah.
And I'm sure that that's consistent with others.
Do you want to follow a victim, or do you want to follow a hero? Somebody that never plays the victim, that always is very positive. That's why I think Trump was very popular, because he didn't play the victim, and all these people.
He did play the victim. He was always crying. I think Trump fooled people, but I think that he's just as much of a coward and a product of the fiat system as any of these other politicians too. I just think that he was trying to tap into the energy that is real, and the demand for truth and leadership, and effectively the opposite of what the swamp represented. But he himself was also part of the swamp. So I don't know. I don't like to glorify Trump in any way, because I just think that he is also an utter coward, and also an utter loser, and also an utter crybaby. But all of these damn politicians are. That's why Bitcoin.
Yes, but you can see how.
I think your analysis was still spot on. Breaking down like, hey, there's these obvious weaknesses. There's no leadership, and that is true for the financial system. That's true for political system. That's true for likely all of our systems, all of our infrastructure.
Yeah, I point taken. But and I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for anybody. But if you can see the difference between AOC cowering from 50 unarmed people versus Trump out there giving a speech, rallying people, right? So there's a big difference in how they played the game, and at least in my mind. And so people don't want to follow the victim. How is the victim going to protect you if they can't even protect themselves? That's what I'm trying to say, is that people see the weakness of the system. And I think that's going to make people think like we need to take things more into our own hands. And so that's what I want to see. I want to see people taking their freedom in their own hands, making their own way in life. And you can't do that when you're playing by other people's rules. And that includes the stock market. That includes, putting money into your pension fund instead of buying Bitcoin. So I hope people take responsibility.
Yeah. And, I'm not a big fan of 401ks. I'm not a big fan of, these tax beneficial accounts, because I understand the true honest trade-offs that you're making. Like, yeah, it's tax deferred. Yeah, you get all these benefits, but you're playing by their rules. Like, and they can change the rules when it's convenient to them. And they've shown that already. Like, I'm a millennial. People who are millennials, know that they're not going to get their Social Security. Like, that's a fact. Like, when is it going to be like, we know that we're not going to get our tax diverse status on our 401k savings, right? And again, that's why I like Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin is something that you can truly own. Like, ownership in Bitcoin is a new level of ownership that pretty much didn't exist before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what did you think about Elon Musk and his bio, hashtag Bitcoin?
Man, I mean, Elon Musk really knows how to meme. That's all I have to say. I've been hearing rumors of him, being interested in Bitcoin. Like, he's obviously teased Bitcoin, he's teased Dogecoin, he's teased things like that. But I think it's extremely bullish. Like, he is the most wealthy man in the world. Theoretically, he is woke. We've seen him, leave California, go to Texas. We've seen him being interested in the oil and gas industry in Texas. He's obviously interested in the energy industry. So there's so many symmetries between what he's building with Tesla, with SpaceX, what he has built with PayPal, and then now Bitcoin. And then the fact that, he deleted everything on his bio and just put hashtag Bitcoin. And now he said he's leaving Twitter and has not changed that. Like, that's like, he's effectively turned himself into a Bitcoin meme warrior, just like Michael Saylor, just like Jack Dorsey. And I mean, I keep saying this, Bitcoin gets it all. Like, you think, like, there's literally nothing that Bitcoin does not get. Like, people will willingly give Bitcoin everything. And it's so incredibly bullish to see some of the most powerful men in the current system bending to Bitcoin.
Yeah. But don't you think it exposes a little bit of weakness in the market when just a simple thing like changing his bio can pump the price 20% in an hour?
I mean, maybe
and then crash.
Maybe you see that as weakness. I mean, there's just so much volatility here and so much misunderstanding around Bitcoin. But ultimately, the amount of Bitcoins that are circulating, that the marginal price that is being reflected there is a very small amount of the total Bitcoin supply. And I just think there's more and more people who are buying into and becoming hodlers of last resort, who, they're only taking supply off the market, who, in my opinion, this is why I think the GameStop thing is very much kind of like a preview to what Bitcoin's going to do. Is like, Bitcoin is both hyper liquid and hyper scarce at the same time. And as soon as there are significant influxes or changes in demand, like, we're going to see Bitcoin's price, become extremely volatile to the upside.
Yeah. But every action has a reaction. So I don't want to see extreme volatility to the upside. I want nice, steady, maybe 50% gains every year or something, instead of a pump where, like in December, where we pumped, what was it, 3x within a month.
It was a lot.
Yeah. And then we've had significant pullbacks. And I don't think necessarily this pullback is done. We'll have to see how that turns out. But yeah, I don't think my initial reaction when I woke up in the morning and I saw the price had shot up like that after Elon, I was disappointed. I really didn't. I thought Bitcoin was a deeper market than that to react like that, and so I don't think that was it was kind of a negative to me.
I don't know, but again, like, this is an extremely powerful, influential individual putting his rubber stamp on Bitcoin in a big way. I don't know. I have a lot more optimistic, like, he's the richest man in the world.
In a big way.
Every single other person under him is less in terms of, at least his buying power.
Yeah, but he had Dogecoin on there at one point.
Yeah, but that was obviously a joke. And then he went on to CoinDesk, or he went on to Clubhouse, and he said that, yeah, Doge is a joke. But I feel like even though I'm late to Bitcoin, it's on the verge of being gaining mass adoption and mass acceptance. So I mean, I don't know. I think that the market was able to tell that he's serious. Like, he actually is putting his stamp on Bitcoin. And again, like, I think, Bitcoin's scarcity is something that will destroy markets. It will destroy clearinghouses.
Yeah.
It will wreck people until Bitcoin fully becomes a legitimate asset. And once Bitcoin fully becomes viewed as a legitimate asset by the general public, then we're going to see that consistent just up. But until that happens, there's just going to be the volatility that's created by the asymmetric knowledge about what Bitcoin is and how Bitcoin is going to play into the future.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I remember that analogy of Bitcoin being a oil tanker or something, that it just takes a long time to turn an oil tanker. They can't just turn on a dime. So I thought Bitcoin was getting to be more like that, but the Elon drama made me a little bit disappointed in Bitcoin. But hey, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Don't be disappointed, man. The volatility is part of the value prop. The volatility is part of the fireworks. And I mean, I've already, like, we've seen people say like, oh, Bitcoin's boring because it's not volatile enough. So as soon as you think Bitcoin's not volatile enough, it's going to rear its beautiful volatile head around.
Yeah. I mean, that's good to get headlines and that's good to get adoption in a way. Right. But once you want to go to the next level, like, and become money is not going to be that volatile. Right. It's not, once it gets up there in market cap, it should lose volatility. That if it doesn't, then we have problems.
But it has, and I would argue that has been losing volatility. Like Bitcoin back in the day, I'm sorry to the Bitcoiners, but it was truly a shitcoin. Like there was periods in Bitcoin's history where it was a shitcoin. And it's much, much less volatile now than it is back then. And I mean, you can see it in the, OG Bitcoiners that have now become shitcoiners. They were always there for the shitcoining. They were shitcoiners since day one. Bitcoin was a shitcoin. Bitcoin acted that way. It was extremely volatile. They could manipulate it. Like it scratched their itch. And then as soon as Bitcoin evolved past that, they couldn't get over it. And hence why they detracted to shitcoining. So I don't know. You've been here for a long time, but I would say that throughout my 4 years here, like I've seen Bitcoin become less volatile, more legitimate.
Yeah.
But yet it's still extremely misunderstood. It still is extremely scarce, and volatility is still part of the short to medium term adoption cycle, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say that Bitcoin did act like a shitcoin, but Bitcoin, it was never an actual shitcoin, right?
Sure, I'll make that correction.
Yeah.
Shame on me to speak ill of Bitcoin.
Yeah. All right, where are we going next, man? Oh, you're muted.
Let's get a little bit more analysis on the silver thing. I haven't been following it as closely. It just seemed like all of a sudden that the silver squeeze was the new narrative. Although I just don't know that much details about, what was kind of going on in the background.
Well, I don't know a ton either. It came out over the weekend and, this last weekend, and a lot of people have been talking about this for 10 years about trying to crash JP Morgan by longing silver, right? This was the Max Kaiser meme of buy silver, crash JP Morgan. And this fit with the narrative of the little guy getting back at banks for Wall Street bets. And so I kind of thought there was something to it. For example, Dogecoin, that didn't fit. I don't think that matched their kind of narrative. So I don't know if that was specifically part of this Wall Street bet sort of pump game that they have going on. But silver, I thought, might do that. And it did pump $2 at open, but then it stopped and it's kind of reversed a little bit since then. And they haven't been able to make a dent. So if Bitcoin is bigger than silver, the silver market cap, then yeah, I would expect something similar. That's why I said I don't think they can do that with Bitcoin. But
Bitcoin's not bigger than silver right now.
It isn't? I thought silver was only like $100 billion market cap.
We could double check
that. Gonna have to Google that.
Yeah, let's do it right now. Yeah, 1.57 trillion.
Oh yeah, 1.57.
So we're not quite there yet.
Well, still, Bitcoin will be there very shortly.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to Lynn Alden a while back about how her mental model for Bitcoin is, and she sees Bitcoin in a similar place in her portfolio as silver. Strangely enough, Bitcoin and silver's stock to flow prior to this past halving were about identical. So theoretically, this is the halving where Bitcoin kind of goes from being on silver's level as a monetary asset to being on gold's level as a monetary asset. So we should see that transition in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, silver's not even a monetary asset anymore, right? It's losing its monetary premium as fast as Bitcoin is gaining it.
Yep. Well, and you could theoretically argue that gold is in the same boat too. Everything is in the same boat in terms of losing monetary value and store of value, characteristics compared to Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
So,
that's all I have.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit like how do we get non-Bitcoiners to kind of see Bitcoin as a more and more legitimate way to, kind of free themselves of the suits, free themselves of the man, right? That's what Bitcoin is to us, to Bitcoiners, people who've gone down that rabbit hole. But like, what is it going to take for, like, I was telling you about my friend who made a lot of money on GME. Like, he's still a fiat apologist. Like, he still doesn't buy into the Bitcoin thing despite what happened, right? Despite any of the emotions and feelings of betrayal and anger that were invoked last week. Like, what is it going to take?
Well, I don't think that Bitcoin is necessarily for the unbanked, that old meme. I don't think Bitcoin necessarily is for the small guys versus the suits. Bitcoin is for everybody. I think that Bitcoin will attract first people that are savvy in the way of economics and money. And I think that has happened because the Austrians got in, the gold bugs got in, and that stuff like that. Also cypherpunks that are into cryptography and privacy. So it's going to attract people like that first. But on a class comparison, the retail investor versus the institutional investor, I think they're going to find it at a similar rate. So I wouldn't think of it as kind of a class thing. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, we're living in a world that is more and more being defined by class conflict. Like, how does, like, is that going to be a bad thing for Bitcoin adoption, that both classes can kind of look at Bitcoin as the enemy because it doesn't actually take down their enemy? Like, do you kind of get what I'm saying? Like, I could see the suits looking at Bitcoin and being like, this is a vile thing that takes away our privilege. And then on the flip side, I could see, the populace kind of looking at Bitcoin and be like, all the suits already got in on this thing. Like, the distribution is, crap, whatever, all rich white guys are the ones who have all the supply, and we need to do something else. Like, how do you feel about like those kind of like two, like that kind of double-edged narrative that can kind of come at Bitcoin from the fact that it is for everyone and it's not favoring one class over the other?
I don't know. I haven't really thought too much about that because Bitcoin is such a individual, like the incentives affect the individual the most. So I've used the example of a guy and a banker in the boardroom. They're going to come to a consensus on the board that Bitcoin isn't for them, but then that guy's going to go home and buy Bitcoin. I think it's going to work like that slowly but surely until there's a very sizable percentage of people that own it, and then it's going to be a race. But I also think that the poor people in general, they are less good with money. That's one reason why they're poor, most likely. And so they are not going to, they're most likely going to be late to the party. The people that you want to see getting on board are the richer people, because yes, there are corrupt rich people. There are bad, evil rich people, but managers, really good managers, are rich people. So I would say most rich people are rich because they produced something, they provided value to the economy. Most there are some, of course, in the system that it's a corrupt system. So there's lots of unearned wealth out there. But I would say still, for the most part, most rich people are rich because they earned it. So I would expect them to see the value in Bitcoin first. versus people that aren't good with money. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How much of, poor people not being good with money is a cause of poor, kind of poor educational infrastructure, poor education about money, and lack of access and lack of credit? Like Pierre Richard came onto POV Crypto, during the riots, and he really broke down how the fiat money system, really creates like these kind of like these barriers to entry based on things like credit score, the right neighborhoods, things like that. And the only thing that's accessible to everyone is cash, and that's the thing that is being deteriorated the fastest. That's the thing that's being that is on the bottom of the totem pole in terms of the financial stack. So Bitcoin, as the best money in the world that anyone can buy into, like I see it as a way to unlock human capital. And yeah, maybe there's people who have a disadvantage because of their financial status and their education levels, but eventually, Bitcoin will be there for them as well, especially as the fiat system continues to marginalize them. This is also a two-part thing. Like, hey, they have this education gap, they have this knowledge gap, this skill gap, but they're also being marginalized at the most significant rate as well. And that kind of pushes them towards Bitcoin. You look at where Bitcoin ATMs are at, they're all in low-income neighborhoods because guess what? They can't get bank accounts anywhere else. Bitcoin is their bank account. It's the only thing that's saying yes, that is liquid.
Yeah, there's obviously some effect of that money has on people, the time preference of society, and it does form certain, I would say, institutions within society that favor certain behavior over other behavior. But there's also, I think, valuing wealth in money itself is not necessarily the best way to go about it, right? If you have your health, you have your family, you have things you enjoy in life, that type of stuff is priceless in a way, and we don't necessarily value our lives in that. We think of poor people as not having money, but maybe they have other good things in life, right? But it's a hard question to peel apart, and I don't know how to answer it other than that.
Yeah, I mean, a subject for another podcast, and maybe we can have a Bitcoin Magazine podcast where we kind of get a little bit more heady with the conversation. But keeping this on the subject of macro and Fed watch, what's kind of your medium to short term look on Bitcoin? Like, obviously, you're a little disappointed with the Elon pump. Bitcoin kind of went close, what was it, like 37, then crashed back down to 32. Today is the second, and Bitcoin is back up to 35. What's your TA on Bitcoin? How do you kind of see the market continue to develop in the short term?
Well, I thought that Bitcoin needed a significant pullback, and we've gotten that. But there was also, I thought it was going to go lower, but the other option is that you can just stretch it out with time. So if we just stay right around, the mid 30s for another few weeks, that could be enough to relieve this kind of need for accumulation or consolidation, and then we can go up higher. I thought the Wall Street bets thing was going to affect the market more than it did. Seems the S&P is right back in its normal channel. The oil is pumping today, so that is a good sign for stocks in general. The dollar is breaking out too, though, so we have to see how that will affect the markets. A strong dollar will affect the how that will affect the markets in the next few weeks. But if that does continue and the dollar goes up significantly, then it will definitely provide pressure on the markets in general, and maybe even Bitcoin too. So we'll have to see how that develops.
One of my favorite metrics is the Mayer multiple. It just kind of gives
Mm-hmm.
you a really good understanding of, where Bitcoin's price is compared to, the last 200 days. And right now the Mayer multiple is at 2. Historically,
Mm.
accumulation should happen anywhere under 2.4 of the Mayer multiple. So yeah, we really need to stretch out this 30K price point so the 200-day moving average can catch up to it. Because right now the price point is double the 200-day moving average, which is signaling that yeah, historically it's still a good accumulation time, but it is expensive. Like this is the upper echelon or the upper level of what is acceptable kind of Bitcoin accumulation time. So either time or kind of reverting a little closer back to the mean, I could see that as being very healthy.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a good place to put it, but I was doing a little bit of research on the previous the previous bull cycle, and how we always had the 30% to 40% pullbacks, and it was just interesting that was about the amount of margin in the system. So you had a lot of people 3x, because Bitfinex offered up to 3x leverage, and they when they were one of the bigger exchanges, and so the 1/3 move, 33%, squeezed the longs or squeezed the shorts. And it's very interesting that it was marked out the tops. Now, if you put that into today's context, again, I think that we crashed just under 30%. So another 5 to 10% lower would be right in line with historical and right in line with the overall kind of margin in the system.
Very interesting. I mean, I think the idea of margin it plays a really big role, and margin played a big role in the GME thing, and I think that margin is going to continue to play a really big role in Bitcoin's history and future price action. So part of Bitcoin, I think, is destroying margin. Like that's kind of like the long game for Bitcoin is destroying the ability to margin or to kind of have that kind of leverage. Yeah, I think that the kind of connection there is valid and interesting.
Right on, right on. What do we got? Anything left? Is that
Yeah,
it for this week?
I think it's a good place to wrap it up. Next week, guys, we have Nick Bhatia coming on. Extremely excited.
So excited.
You need to be reading his book, Layered Money. You need to listen to all the podcasts that he's done since dropping the book, Layered Money. And yeah, you need to follow Nick because he has a very, very good understanding of the current financial system and a beautiful kind of vision for how Bitcoin can evolve into filling the gaps that the current financial system is eventually going to leave. But yeah, until then, make sure to check out this podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the FedWatch Bitcoin and Macro podcast feed. This is the second episode that is not on the Bitcoin Magazine podcast feed. It's on its own FedWatch feed. Of course, we're on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, go over to your podcast player, subscribe to our feed. We need to get as many of the previous listeners onto this podcast as possible. But yeah, until then, follow me at CK_snarks. You can find me at Bitcoin Magazine as well. We just moved Bitcoin 2021 to Miami, June 4th and 5th. The excitement around that has been absolutely unbelievable. We have sold an enormous amount of tickets the last 2 days. And I believe that, we've had thousands of people interacting with our Twitter and other marketing. So keep an eye out for that, b.tc/conference if you want to learn more. We're going to have guys like Chamath, Nick Szabo, Jack Dorsey, all speaking at the event. So very, very exciting stuff. Ansel, where can people find out more about you?
At Ansel Lindner and bitcoinandmarkets.com. I'm just up the road from Miami, so I might be making it this year.
Let's go. Well, you got a ticket on Bitcoin Magazine. Everyone else, go check out b.tc/conference to get your ticket. We are selling tickets like crazy, and there's a very, very much a hard cap on how many people can actually attend the event. So don't be late.